Let me start by stating I'm a 24-year-old female and downloaded Tinder to see what it was all about. I didn't put too much into it though. I never took it seriously. I never take much seriously. Most of the things I do are for a laugh. I think I tend to forget that the internet is not a game and that there are real-life people behind that screen. I get on the bus back home after a long day of running errands. I sit down and from the corner of my eye, notice a heavy-set man staring at me. I'm used to being stared at, so I ignore him. Also note, my Tinder account has been officially terminated months ago. I sneeze, he says bless you, and I say thank you. He was a heavy-set guy with full hair, green eyes, and an olive complexion. He then hands me a tissue. It's clean, don't worry. And then he gives me a piece of gum, 5 gum to be exact. I say thank you and throw it in my backpack. 1 mile, he says. Based on how he speaks, I think he might be a little on the special side. His voice was slow and low. Huh? 1 mile. That was on your Tinder. It said you were 1 mile away. I recognize you. We spoke for a bit. Then you stopped chatting. He then gives me one of those chocolate balls that are wrapped in all fancy like red. I then nervously giggled and told him I deleted my account. To be honest, I didn't even remember chatting with him. I would just swipe right on any and everybody. He asked me repeatedly for my number, and I gave it to him because I'm really bad at rejecting people in person. He immediately called me to confirm it was my number, and at this point I got off at a different bus stop, close to home but not too close, and sped walked home. I threw away his candies, blocked his number, and I really hope it was just a coincidence, and that he wasn't trying to find me.
Hey guys, it's Rye Horror. It seems like many of you guys enjoy my animated stories, but only 27% of you are subscribed. If you want to see this channel hit 10k subs, then please like and subscribe. Now back to the show.
When I was 19, I was still living with my family, as well as working 2 jobs to save up money. 1 food service and 1 retail. I was also extremely depressed. I had been sexually assaulted the year prior and was still taking everything really hard. How I very poorly dealt with my depression was sleeping around, drinking, and a whole lot of weed. I stopped counting who I was sleeping with once my body count hit the 40s. One of the ways I got my hookups was through a very popular BDSM website. I was casually chatting with a guy called Charlie. We met in a public park, and even though he was a little strange, he didn't seem dangerous. I made it very clear from the get-go that I didn't want anything serious whatsoever, strictly friends with benefits. I also kept him around because he was 27 and bought me booze with my money. After a few weeks of this, he admitted to me he was autistic, which didn't bother me in the slightest, because I'd met many people on the spectrum who functioned like normal members of society. Everything was going relatively okay, until I found out that some of my co-workers knew him. The ones who knew him were all around the same age, so it of course didn't surprise me. But naturally I was curious and asked around what people knew of him. My boss, who knew him, simply said he was strange. A co-worker in a differing department said he gave her super creepy vibes all through high school. And one of my co-workers, who I saw almost every other shift, said that Charlie was almost always actively trying to break him up and his boyfriend. I thought it was super strange, didn't know he was bi, didn't really care. I confronted Charlie about it, and he told me some half-truths about how he had a crush on my co-worker. I told them to leave them alone because they were newly engaged. Over these 2 months, I met a guy through my food service job who I really liked. His name was Beck, and because I liked Beck a lot, I started distancing myself from Charlie. Well, of course, he doesn't like this and starts giving off some red flags. Charlie told me he was almost positive he was schizophrenic. I told him that even though I was a psych major, I was no way near being qualified enough to help him, nor did I really want to, but I encouraged him to find help, and even recommended my own therapist or her husband. He told me he already went to both of them for psychiatric care when he was 15, and they both diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, psychopathy, and dismissed him. I inquired to my therapist about the last time she or her husband diagnosed someone, specifically a minor with APD. She said that neither of them had ever, as it was pretty rare, and I confronted Charlie about his lying, and he denied ever doing so. He continued to try and talk to me about his mental health, which I didn't mind listening to, but I wasn't qualified or let alone licensed to give advice on other than seek help. Charlie then dropped the bomb that he wholeheartedly believed he was a 300-year-old Nazi vampire who killed Jewish infants during World War II in a past life. I tell him he needs to seek serious help if he's having these thoughts and false memories. Charlie also said he'd been having dreams about my parents' dogs tearing him apart, and that he had also had dreams about murdering me. My body kind of kicked into survival mode, so I faked getting a phone call from my parents to have an excuse to leave. I cut off all contacts with him shortly after, at the advice of my now boyfriend, Beck, as well as my parents. I am now also in the process of moving in with him, and I was going to have to break it off with Charlie anyhow. Charlie constantly sent text messages and leaves numerous voicemails, but I only ever had the idea to record one of them, in which he begs me to stay and to not leave him behind, like my retail co-worker did. Things go a little quiet for a few days, and I think he's finally given up, until one evening at my food service job he shows up. I immediately took off my gloves and ran into the back room. My boss follows me and basically asks me what the hell's going on, because I'm doing this in the middle of a rush. I tell him a very, very condensed story of what's happening and beg him to let me stay in the back and work instead. I can tell he's skeptical, but lets me stay in the back as long as I work. I tell Beck to let him know what's going on, and he hauls ass to my job. While talking to Beck, two of my co-workers were helping Charlie with his order, when he said, "I know Lily's in the back hiding from me." He paid for his food, leaves, and my co-workers tell me it's safe. Beck is outside waiting for him, and tells him very firmly without threatening that I didn't want to see him anymore for any reason. Charlie tries saying that he only came there for the food. Beck tells him there's another restaurant like this downtown. Beck made sure I'm okay and then left. When I return home, I tell my parents what's happening, and they tell me to get a restraining order. Beck and my retail co-workers came with me to the police station to file the report. My uncle, a retired lawyer, gets in contact with an old friend who will be my counsel. My uncle, my lawyer, and Charlie's lawyer all talk and come to an agreement that if Charlie never talks to me or comes to my place of work ever again, I will drop all charges. But if he doesn't abide by the restriction, he will be tried and likely lose, since I have numerous witnesses and video evidence to back me up. The ending is slightly anticlimactic, but he does as he's told. So yeah, that was my unfortunate stalking experience.
The drab office walls trapping me like every other day exuded their foreign, somewhat alien aura, as if no human was meant to exist in that space for that long. How long have I been here? I thought as I clicked through Excel spreadsheets until my eyes grew weary. The clock by the wall spelled its sonorous litany in a tick-tock, tick-tock, and as I focused my tired eyes on the position of the arms, a smile grew on my face. Today was the day. Clocking out of work not too long after, I rushed to the car's ignition and drove home. It had been a typical 10-hour workday, every day dedicated to sustaining the one thing that kept me going for so long, my wife, Teresa. A shining jewel of purity and beauty, or so I thought. Life used to be so easy before it all tumbled down. Before long, I'd arrived home, parking in the usual spot as every other day, and letting the rumbling engine under my feet go to sleep. How much of my paycheck was she going to take this month if I hadn't acted? How many of my hours of the day would go to null? That thought occurred to me as I slammed behind the cold rusted iron gate that allowed access to my residence. The air in the spacious house felt unusually cold, and yet a crackling electricity was perceivable. Not from the location itself, but from my proximity to the computer. I knew it had to be time. Walking up to the bedroom, I lingered my vision on the sheets that were never fixed, and rested in a disarranged clump. The same bed I had caught her cheating with another man. Normally Teresa would have solved the trivial issue of a messy bed, straightening the sheets in her endless pretense to do something useful for the house, but signs of struggle were scattered about. One of her shoes resting next to a fallen lamp, laid on the ground helpless, with the other shoe being further away towards the window, as if she had tried to escape and was caught. No matter. After some time spent turning on the sleeping computer, waiting for the beeping sound of the bootstrap sequence, life was given into the screen of the monitor, as a feeling of disgust and excitement rose from my chest into my neck, wrapping around to the back of the skull like the death touch of a spectral pair of hands. The email was here. It merely said, "Esteemed Mr. Mike, it is done. From here on out, you are in control of her destiny. Choose wisely. You will be charged accordingly." Under it, a video appeared, which I double-clicked, my face spasming in a wide, joyless grin. The video player opened far too fast for me to savor the moment, and the footage started playing. Hands tied to the ceiling and stripped bare, Teresa's cheeks were stained in black tears of run-down mascara. 4 men, all wearing pig masks, circled her, wielded different tools in their hands as she whimpered like a dog. One of the 4 stepped in front of her, as the camera zoomed in to allow for a better view. He slipped on 2 black leather gloves and started punching her stomach. What occurred in the rest of the video was so sickening that I cannot tell you what had happened, for obvious reasons. I looked at the time of the footage. It was 1 minute in, with 59 minutes remaining. Without hesitation, I took off my formal pants until they hung by the ankles, exposing my underwear, before resuming my viewing. That terrible hour went faster than I could realize, and at the end, I wish I had spent the extra $5,000 on extended duration. No matter. With napkins circling the chair, it was now time to pick my pants up and make the decision. The words "kill her" were typed in the text field, just to be erased as a better, more sinister idea surfaced in mind. If she's such a loose woman, I thought, with bile seeping through my teeth, maybe this will be better for her. Sell her into prostitution. 2 months after the event, I had rented a car just for the occasion and taken a few precious days off work to travel across the country. After 5 hours, I pulled up to a shabby motel. A broken husk of a human was what I saw when the headlights brought her into sight. Scantily clad and with a broken look in her eyes, she leaned in the space of the car door, freed by the sliding down window.
"Hey mister, what can I do for you? What the fuck? Mike?"
she uttered in a voice that quickly spiked from depression to surprise and shock. "You can go to hell, Teresa," I responded, pointing my pistol towards her and quickly pulling the trigger.